thank you. And I will start presenting. As you can see, it's really not a medical science paper, but we generated the original data and we worked together both with the Peace Compass and Sinoway. So this is basically the secondment, maybe. And I would like also to thank Peter Young for the very lovely apartment with the garden where I could stay here. So as you can see in the title, we'll touch upon topics related to survey research. So in this sense, it's halfway the methods panel or how it's the measurement panel. So the more general question is basically why people participate in surveys, and obviously we don't have the extensive answers to this, but at least partly we try to address this problem. And you will see that our data is mostly a panel data. It's not coordinated as a panel data, but it's already previous participants of previous waves are there. So in a way it also touches upon the question of attrition. And obviously our motivation is also a bit more practical. Like how can we influence these people to participate more? Or how can we influence these people to actually give the answers that we want? Give the I think Freud would be very happy with this, but that's the ultimate goal. But obviously the question is how can we influence them to complete the questionnaire and give us full data? Then we won't have all the problems with missingness and recoding and coding and dropping people from the sample. So a couple of keywords here are item non-response. When there is a missing for only one item. There is unit non-response, which basically relates more to response rates and response propensity. And here the most problematic assumption is that you cannot basically say that those people who decide to participate in a sample, in a survey, and those people who decide not to participate are the same. So we need to know these differences in order to make our inferences much easier to generalize. And we have also the self-selection problem, and I will discuss the self-selection problem a bit more as we go through. So what we found to be a very interesting possibility is to look at how can we motivate the people based on what type of recontact email messages we send them. This means that we said first or previously there is not much evidence found that the cover letters matter, but usually they were tested against financial incentives when you offer money to somebody to participate. So it's a bit more different. Plus we had this new situation where basically the cover letter, the email message in which we try to recontact the people, contain the link where you can actually complete the new wave, the new questionnaire. So we think that it's much more suitable to analyze now these cover letters, because you start reading the email message. If it convinces you at least halfway, you have the link there, you click. So it's much closer to the decision to at least start completing this questionnaire. If it doesn't work, if the motivation is not there, then obviously you will delete or you will mark it as spam. But it's not the thing that you come back to. Like after a couple of days, you say, I got an email from Peace Compass, let's go back, see what... No, you open the email and then you have also the link. So there is a much closer relationship between the moment of motivating the people and actually having the possibility to access the survey. So we wanted to have variation there. We wanted to have variation in the cover letters, and we wanted to link this whole proposition to motivation and how you motivate people to participate and supply you the data, the more complete data. And there is literature on this, mostly the locus of the motivation, which is basically, is it external or internal? I just like the word locus because I think it's nice. So this is why you offer incentives. You offer incentives to people, but this also means that you're pushing the motivation to be an external motivation. People will not complete the questionnaire because they're interested in the topic, or they want to help you, or whatever reasons. They will complete it because you offer them incentives. And this is why also there is quite a lot of research. When do you give the money? Do you give the money or the lottery or whatever incentives you have before completing or after completing the survey? So we have this motivational aspect, but we still did not offer any incentives in this sense. More specifically, we're discussing about a Dutch sample. It's an online survey, and the self-selection problem that I already mentioned. So we're not claiming here anything like generalizability on not even the Dutch population. But you have to remember that these are people who completed once a questionnaire, Afterwards, they said that yes, I want to further help the research. So that is the first step in self-selection. They gave the details that were not really linked to the questions, and then they also supplied their email addresses. Some people valid ones, some people not valid ones, which is a different question, and I think it's a very interesting question. Why, if it's not mandatory, you just don't leave it blank with AAAA.AA or whatever. So, but that's not really in the paper yet. So we had a huge sample. A huge sample, 14,000 people. Some would say it's not a sample, it's a population. We had 14,000 people. They were ranging between not even contacted, like around 6,000 people. So they had only one questionnaire completed, supplied their email address, and that's it. Afterwards, they weren't completed. That was the local election questionnaire. And there were, of course, people who were already once recontacted successfully and twice. So we have in the sample also people who have completed 3 questionnaires, and this will be their 4th. And we also have people for whom it will be basically the 2nd one. So our dimensions that we're interested in basically can be put as appeal, complexity, and tone. We want to see how variations in appeal in the cover letter, complexity, or tone actually influence whether you will participate and what quality of data you will supply us. We kept 2 baseline messages, so if we think about experimental setting, we have 2 control groups. We need the 2 control groups to have some leverage to see whether there is, what is the default variation between any general groups without treatment. Plus, we keep the baseline messages because we want to compare our results to previous results. So this is why we have 2 baseline control groups, which adds up to 10 experimental groups. And all the contacts were done simultaneously, so the email messages were sent out basically at during the same night. What was the design? We worked on the messages. We used theoretical perspective from Dillman's reward, cost, and trust matrix, basically linking the reward to the appeal, linking the cost to the complexity of the message, and linking the trust part to the formal, informal language that you use to recontact somebody. What we did afterwards, we had to set up the experimental design, and that I think is really interesting in the sense of we have 10 groups, but we also have to make sure that we do not have confounders in the sense of what previously was linked to response rates, like gender, education, and in our case also how many times they were recontacted. So we did a very nice balancing in this sense to make sure that all the groups are equal when it comes to these covariates. Which means that if in your 14,000 sample you had 55% of women and 45% of male, then we tried to maintain this ratio actually for each of the experimental groups. In the paper you have the plots. We managed to do this, and I will stop tapping our back or how. So yeah, that worked out just fine. And then we randomly assigned the messages to these groups. So we said there's this group getting this type of an appeal. And afterwards we waited for the data. However, you need to know much more about the treatment. So we have the appeal, which ranges from egoistic message and altruistic message. Here the difference is when we frame something as egoistic, we try to push the respondent that the reward is that you can express your opinion. When we thought about the altruistic messages, it was always to contribute, to help research, to help people better understand what's going on, etc. So it was the idea of help. The simple complex, it's a wording question. So what type of words, how long the sentences are, basically that's the dimension. And the formal, informal, well in Dutch, luckily there is also a difference in how we formulate this, but we also kept a couple of words separately. So these were the dimensions. And then in the paper we offer a couple of indicators why we actually managed to first present the messages that are distinguishable. And this is done by presenting some descriptive statistics on word choice, like how many times contribution appears in altruistic messages compared to how many times it appears in egoistic messages, after the similarity index, whatever. And afterwards we have the readability scores for the second dimension, the simple complex. You can see in the paper that these messages line up very nicely along these classic readability scores. So when we wanted to make a message that is easy to understand, that in fact scores very low on the readability index, which is very good. The complex messages score very high, and the baseline messages are somewhere in between, which is also important for us. And afterwards we did something that was presented also beforehand by Professor Benoit. We did quantitative text analysis. You have all the problems with it in the paper. Texts are short, 250 words. And it's multi-dimensional, so it's a bit tough to extract the real positions. However, we can say that, for example, the altruistic and the egoistic dimension, which was our goal to distinguish, are on different parts of the scale. So basically, that worked out fine. We are offering these as a plus in the paper, for you not to have to trust us that we did a good job formulating the email messages. We just want to offer a couple of quantitative statistics, in the objective statistics, that yes, these email messages are different, and yes, these email messages actually tap into the dimensions that we wanted to make them tap. Well, this is the response rates. First I will present the results in the sense of response rates, and afterwards the data quality indicators. So as you can see, luckily, and this is what we're praying for, we have variation. Like, otherwise it's really breaking the data, and in this case it wasn't really necessary. So there is, some of the groups are not statistically, so it's not discernible in the response rates. However, some of the groups are clearly underachieving when it comes to response rates. These are 0.15 means 15%, for example. But you can see that the first conclusion is that baseline messages that were previously employed by Sinovate work the best when it comes to actually attracting the respondents. For topic issues and stuff like that, you can find in the paper why this could be the case. Otherwise, if we go on a different coding, we can see that simple messages fare much better than complex messages. Informal, formal distinction, there is not much to say, because both the averages, and so there is basically no real story. However, again, you can see that altruistic messages also fare much better and differently better. You can discriminate between egoistic and altruistic messages. And here is where the baseline message story comes. If you link it back to the descriptive statistics, you can see that the baseline messages are basically a very nice combination. So they're a bit altruistic, they're not too complex, so this is why they work just fine. And the other difference will be mentioned in the conclusions. Afterwards, we switched to modeling the data quality indicator, which is missingness. This is the missing counts for each individual. So you have 20 items, somebody can have tops 20, and somebody can have 0 for if no missing is there. Well, you can see this distribution, and it's not surprising, because there is already self-selection. These are the politically more informed people, so it's not that surprising that there is that there are definitely zeros. However, if your goal is not to embarrass yourself or the OLS estimator or whatever, it's clear that you cannot model this in normal regression that we use. So it has everything that your multivariate statistics course says. So all the good stuff, it's truncated, zero inflated, like really the skewness. I think the skewness was even negative, which it's lovely. So what we did, we assumed the distribution. So it's definitely a count model, it's Poisson. It's a negative binomial, and it's a zero inflated model. And we played it very conservative, which means that this model leads less stars when it comes to the explanatory variables, but it fits better the data, although the over-dispersion parameter is not significant. So what I'm presenting, it's in results, it may be a bit lower than what you would expect, but it was the best model to fit to this data. So what we see that actually group matters in the sense that if you're not getting the baseline message, whatever else message you are getting, your missing count is expected to be lower. So what we saw before, that it increases, or it's associated, the baseline messages were associated with higher response rates. We see that they are also associated with higher missing counts. So the trade-off is basically, yes, you have more respondents, but it's also not the best quality data that you can you can actually extract. And we can link this back to the theoretical part, which says that if the motivation is external, then we can expect that there is some difference. Afterwards, we had negative formulations to test, again, for the data quality. Negative formulations, I think you know what they are. Basically, we just switch. So first you're asked whether, do you like oranges? You say yes, and then the next question, do you dislike oranges? If you again say yes, well, that's sad for you. So basically, you would expect that it's a -1 correlation between these. However, research shows that it's usually around -0.22. In our case, for the two items, again, -0.42, -0.33. So yes, there are problems with this, with the negative formulations. The type of reversals also matters. We had, and it's in the paper, there is this fatigue during the questionnaire, so you would expect that if the reversal comes later, then you would have more inconsistency, and this is also what we observed. When the items are very close that we reversed, there is no gender effect, but when it comes to these very distant ones, then there is a gender effect, leading more inconsistency when it comes to women. Formal and complex messages basically in a way show more inconsistency. So this is a reversed effect compared to the missing data, but it's in line with what we would expect if we link it back to the response propensities. And it's also, this is why I tagged the recovery of baseline messages, because here again the baseline messages fare very well. So the groups that had the baseline messages actually had the lowest inconsistency. So we can see afterwards, again, what we have to do, we still have to relink it to the previous ways. We already started running the model with the psychological determinants, and actually they work out the personality traits. And yes, they work out defined as the interaction. Afterwards, there is a different perspective what we should do in how to model this. We should stack the data, item, observation, and then we will have an estimate for missing response category, missing propensity for each item, because we cannot assume that each item is the same. So they're not really independent, so that has to be done. We already calculated the special acquiescence measures, which are linked to the reversals. These are simple latent class models where you can separate basically the measurement error from that. So this is what we intend to do and what we intend to do in the next couple of days, weeks. But we can already conclude that yes, in this case, without any problems, we can say that email cover letters matter when it comes to both the response rates, both to data quality, and the relationships you already saw. Maybe something leads to higher response rates, but you will be taxed on the data quality. And I think that was basically the presentation. All other things you have in the paper, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you.